And we're back with another episode of the Daily Vedantic. Today's episode is all about what this is all about. This whole project, pursuit, study and reflection of philosophy. It all comes down to the Greek word Philosophia, love of wisdom. Being a philosopher is not a job. It is not some career path. It is not sitting in some isolated wood, in some small little cabin up in the mountains thinking. Being a philosopher is just cultivating a love of wisdom. Wisdom is the capacity to see the end in the beginning. Therefore, it is a love, a cultivation of that capacity to see the end in the beginning. It is a cultivation, a love of clarity. That's all it is. It's not reserved for people that took some aptitude test that said you should be a philosopher and 99.9% of other people shouldn't. If you want to see clearly, then you have a love of wisdom. A love that might be nascent, but can be cultivated by 3 daily practices that anyone not only can do, but most, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, then you're already wired for this. The 3 daily practices of Vedanta are to question everything, not take anything for granted, and to study and reflect daily. Philosophia, a love of wisdom, a love of clarity. You might not have it all the time. None of us, very, very few of us do. I certainly don't. But when you love something, and the Vedantic definition of love is to identify with it. If you identify with clarity, if you seek that out, you are bound to cultivate it more and more. So how do we philosophize? It is not pontificating behind some typewriter in the Alps. It is not studying some college coursework. It's not presenting some paper to a professor. It is questioning all of the external conventions that we can follow so herd-like. Questioning our internal insights that we think we are so certain of. Is not taking anything for granted. Reserving judgment or an evaluation of whether something is good or bad for us, and not taking anything for granted and having gratitude for all of it, be it a raise or cancer. Whether it is someone saying yes to marrying you, or whether it is death of someone that you love. I won't go into too many personal stories in this episode, but I will mention one that I've touched on before, but repetition is power. And that is around an aspect of my life when I was 15 years old, when my sister passed away. And I always think about Stephen Colbert's words when he was describing what it was like when he lost a father and I believe it was 2 of his brothers in a plane accident. And he said that you learn to love most what you would have done anything to change at the time. And there's something so beautiful, well, beauty aside, something so accurate. For 2 years, that was I couldn't sleep with the lights off for 2 years, from 15 to 17. I'd have this recurring dream over and over and over again that she was still alive. This immense, significant disbelief. I'd have the dream so often that I'd confuse what was real and what wasn't. I actually thought, oh yeah, it's normal for people to come back from the dead because the dream would recur so frequently that I'd be like, yeah, I'm used to this happens. I'm familiar with this concept. That experience is one of the best experiences of my life. My wife and I were on a walk recently, just saying that if something happened to one of us, now knowing how powerful of a teacher death can be early on in life, how much that really can push you to seek, to question everything, to seek wisdom, to seize each day, recognizing that you really can't take any of them for granted. But we were walking, and that experience not only taught me so much, shifted my perspective so drastically that it's perhaps a peak experience that I now value in life up there more than maybe any other that I've had. But then it leads to 20 years later telling my wife, as we're walking, us both talking about if something happened to us, it would be a teacher to our children in a way that maybe we never could be. And that sounds probably radical for people to hear. And that's part of that question everything. We can be so certain we know what is or isn't valuable for ourselves or those around us. And yet we have an experience that shows us we actually have no idea what can be invaluable for us. The last practice is to study and reflect daily. This is the secret key of Vedanta, to study and reflect daily, explicitly, not go to church once a week and you go to temple once a week and every few days if you can, read scripture, or you're really elevated if you do this every morning. Vedanta is quite explicit. Study and reflect each day. These 3 daily practices are the daily practices that Swami Parthasarathi, our teacher, talks about and extols over and over and over again. There are other practices within Vedanta. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, just listening, reflecting, meditating. That is a beautiful progression. But the daily practices that any of us can take on, and it might be reading St. Augustine, it might be reading Seneca, it might be reading a Rumi poem, but the emphasis is on the reflection and not just the consumption. Reflection, as it is said within this philosophy, is 100,000 times more powerful than listening or reading. Because we all know, in one ear, out the other. 2 days later, you might as well have never even read it if you didn't reflect on it. Those are the 3 practices within this timeless philosophy. Those are the 3 practices to cultivate wisdom, to cultivate clarity, and who wouldn't want clarity? If you want it for your windshield while you're going 50 miles an hour down the highway, then you probably want it for your life as well. We are all philosophers. We are all seeking clarity. And this won't resonate with everyone. This philosophy might only apply to 1 in 10,000 people. Because we're all naturally wired to benefit from clarity. That's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.